Rain hammered the pavement, the city lights reflecting in the puddles like fractured jewels. I was hurrying home, my heels tapping against the wet sidewalk, when I saw her, a woman hunched over, her children clinging to her like fragile ornaments. They were soaked through, the wind whipping their small bodies. She smiled, a faint, desperate curve of her lips that tugged at something deep inside me. I froze. My own babies, were nestled safely in the back seat of my car, their tiny hands clutching blankets. I shouldn't have stopped. I had appointments, meetings, obligations that outweigh this fleeting humanity on the street, and yet I couldn't drive past. Something in her eyes, raw, wary, and strangely unyielding, spoke to a part of me I rarely let breathe. "Are you hungry?" I asked, tasting foreign on my tongue. My voice sounded different in the rain, softer, unsure. She looked up, startled, as if she hadn't expected a stranger to see her at all. "Yes, if you can spare." Her voice was thin, raspy with fatigue, but beneath it was something else, a dignity that refused to break completely. I nodded, calling for my driver to pull the car over. I could feel the tension in my shoulders unwind slightly, replaced by a strange curiosity. I had never done this before. I had never been a savior, at least not in the way the movies made it look. I was opening my car doors, offering warmth, blankets, food, and, in some small way, hope. The woman's eyes softened when she accepted the food, glancing at my babies in their car seats. "They must be your children." "Yes," I said, feeling an unexpected swell of pride. "They are." And then, just as suddenly, a strange silence settled over us. Rain splattered on the windshield, the city blurred behind the water-streaked glass. I didn't know it yet, but this encounter would unravel more than just a rainy afternoon. It would tear at the threads of my carefully constructed life. I handed her a warm jacket for the children, and watched her bundle them close. "You don't have to stay here," I whispered. "Come home with me, just for tonight." The hesitation in her eyes was palpable, a mix of shame and relief. She nodded. That was the moment I didn't realize I had stepped into a story far bigger than mine. One tangled in love, betrayal, and the echoes of choices I had never truly questioned. I didn't sleep that night. My husband's absence from dinner was normal, but tonight it felt deliberate. A reminder of the distance that had quietly grown between us. The beggar woman slept on a thick mattress I had laid out in the guest room, her children curled beside her. I watched them from the doorway, the shadows of my living room painting long, lonely lines across the marble floor. My husband returned late, the scent of expensive cologne and secrecy trailing him. He paused when he saw the small tableau in the guest room. His eyes narrowed, his hand tightening around his glass of wine. "Who?" he asked, voice sharp, disbelieving. "She's a mother." They were cold, I said, my own voice gaining quiet strength. "I couldn't leave them there." He laughed, a short, credulous sound. "You brought her here. Do you even know who she is?" "I know she needs help," I said, stepping closer, heart pounding in ways I didn't want to admit. His laughter turned brittle. "She's connected to someone we know, someone we should not have involved." His words dangled, a threat wrapped in mystery, and I could feel the weight of it. Though I didn't yet understand the gravity, I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand answers. Instead, I felt my body tighten, the familiar coil of fear and anger mixing with a strange protective instinct. Children, tiny, fragile, and innocent, had done nothing wrong. Yet their presence had suddenly lit a fuse in my husband's carefully curated life. "You can't just let anyone walk into our home," he said, voice colder now. "This is our world, our reputation." I turned to him, eyes blazing, a fire I rarely let rise in his presence. And since when has our reputation mattered more than human life? The room went silent, heavy with unspoken truths. I realized, with a sinking feeling, that this woman was no ordinary beggar, and I would soon find out the story she carried was intimately, painfully entwined with mine. The night stretched long, each tick of the clock louder than the last. I sat in the study, overlooking the rain, slicked streets, and my thoughts spun uncontrollably. How had my life, filled with wealth and carefully curated success, brought me to this moment of helpless vulnerability? I remembered my own childhood. My mother's soft hands and her endless patience. Instead, the way she held us close when the world felt cold. How had I let myself forget what it meant to truly see someone in need? Memories collided. The first time I met my husband, the thrill of his attention, the shiny promises of love and safety. And yet, beneath it all, there had always been a shadow. Secrets whispered behind closed doors, faint traces of laughter that didn't reach his eyes. Now, watching the woman and her children sleep peacefully in my home, I felt the fragile weight of empathy and the crushing certainty that life had a way of catching up with us. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but none of it mattered. I was trapped in my own conscience. Instead, staring at the reflection of someone I barely recognized, I could hear their soft breaths, the tiny murmurs of sleep. In that quiet, I understood this wasn't about my wealth, my pride, or even my marriage. It was about the small moments where lives intersected, where kindness, or the lack of it, could echo forever. Weeks passed, yet the memory of that rainy night haunted me like a persistent shadow. I found myself drawn to the guest room more often than I cared to admit, watching the beggar woman and her children sleep. Their fragile breaths reminded me of a past I had buried. My own failures, my mother's empty warnings, and a choice I had once made, thinking love would fix everything. I remembered the day I had first met her. It wasn't the street that had introduced us. It was a charity gala, the kind I never enjoyed. She had been there, silent among the rich and pretentious, wearing tattered elegance that seemed out of place yet impossible to ignore. I had dismissed her then, offered her a polite smile, and left. But the universe, it seemed, had its plans. Now, lying in bed, I traced her face in memory, the way her eyes reflected both hurt and defiance, the gentle arch of her lips that never truly smiled. I had unknowingly intersected with her life again, and the coincidence, or fate, felt too heavy, too deliberate. And then, a whisper from the past tugged at my mind. My husband, on one of his late night calls, had murmured her name, a tone of intimacy I hadn't noticed at first, had churned, but I had pushed it away. Denial was easier than the truth. I sat by the window, rain streaming down the glass, and wondered how lives could twist in ways we never saw coming. The beggar woman was no longer a stranger. She was a reflection of the consequences of secrecy and selfishness, of choices hidden in the shadows. It happened one evening, the kind of moment that changes everything in silence. Instead, I had gone to the kitchen to prepare dinner when I found an envelope on the counter, addressed in my husband's precise handwriting. Curiosity, sharp and insistent, closer. Inside was a stack of photographs. Her, smiling with him in places she should never have been. Hotels, dinners, intimate embraces captured in stolen time. And a note. I can't explain, but she is more than you know. The room spun. My heart pounded violently, and I sank to the floor, the rain outside a distant echo. This woman, this beggar I had invited into my home, this quiet mother with weary eyes, was my husband's mistress. The betrayal was double-edged. My empathy, kiss, had unknowingly sheltered the very person who had taken pieces of my life in secret. Tears blurred the images, the betrayal slicing deeper because it was personal and human. Not a stranger, instead not a nameless thief, but someone I now realized I had unknowingly embraced. I waited until the night when my husband returned. Instead, the house quiet, except for the soft breathing of the children. My hand trembled as I held the photographs, and I didn't even try to hide the fury boiling within me. He paused at the sight of me, sensing the storm. "What is this?" he asked, though he already knew. "Explain." "This," I said, voice low but unyielding. "Who is she?" He faltered, a rare moment of silence. "It's complicated," he muttered. "Complicated." I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh against the polished walls of our home. You've been living a lie, hiding a betrayal, and you call it complicated. The beggar woman appeared then, awakened by our voices. Her children clung to her, wide-eyed and frightened. I looked at her, not with anger now, but with something heavier: sorrow, confusion, and the knowledge that she too was a victim in ways I hadn't understood. The confrontation left a wound that bled through days. My husband retreated, ashamed, powerless before the truth, while the beggar woman packed her children quietly, her dignity intact despite everything. She left without a word of accusation, leaving only the echo of her presence and the reminder of my own naivety. I felt a strange mix of guilt and relief. I had acted out of kindness, yet unknowingly walked into the consequences of betrayal. The house, once filled with wealth and power, now felt hollow. Reputation meant nothing. Truth, integrity, and empathy weighed far heavier. I spent days walking the city streets alone, watching the rain trace paths down windows and streets, mirroring the lines of my own life. I thought of the beggar woman, her resilience, her unbroken spirit despite hardship and betrayal. She had been my mirror, what true strength and love meant. I realized that life's lessons are never gentle. They arrive with storms, with confrontations, with moments that shatter our illusions. And yet, the weight of the lesson is also a gift: clarity, empathy, and the chance to rebuild. Months passed. The woman never returned, but the memory of her presence lingered. I focused on my children, teaching them that kindness matters, even when it collides with betrayal. I confronted my husband, set boundaries, and discovered a strength I hadn't known existed. Life was quieter, slower. The pain softened into wisdom. I forgave, not him, not her, but the chaos itself. And in that forgiveness, I found an unexpected liberation. One evening, stood by the window, watching rain fall like silver threads over the city. The emptiness of the house no longer felt oppressive. It was a canvas for reflection, growth, quiet strength. I whispered to myself, a final acknowledgement of what had been lost and gained. Forgiveness doesn't erase the pain. It frees the heart that carried it. Somewhere, beyond the rain, the beggar woman's spirit walked strong, her children safe and unbroken. And I, too, stepped forward, carrying the lesson she had unwittingly left me, that empathy, courage, and integrity are worth more than comfort or wealth, and that life's tangled threads eventually lead us to the truth we need to see.